These guys are ridiculous. These guys are ridiculous.
Now, how about them damn Celtics?
Last thing we can talk about today, as we did say, this is a shorter episode in between our two guest episodes. December 15th, so about a week from now, which we will have another guest on, a third one. We're raking in the guests for you guys
Very
lately.
handsome
Let's talk
guest.
about that lately. Yes, sir.
Jack's crush.
December 15th is the unofficial start to the trade season in the NBA, because that's when most of the players who signed this past summer become eligible to be traded. So I think that's where a lot of teams will start taking deals seriously. And if they have already, come to quote unquote agreements internally on deals, and you can obviously start discussing now because the season is open, but that's when you might see trades start, coming in officially, or at the very least, rumors start to tick up. What does that mean for the Celtics? Probably not much, but you've heard, the rumors on Jakob Poeltl. They're looking for multiple firsts for him, which seems a bit expensive. And if you're the Celtics, you can't package Gallinari for him because that's where he came from in a trade anyways. So that probably, doesn't work. You could trade Pritchard and a bunch of bench guys, but again, one of those bench guys would probably have to be Blake Griffin. And at that point, is it even worth it? Because you'd have to re-sign Poeltl for next year on probably an expensive deal. You could look to trade for a wing somewhere. Maybe you look at the Thunder and see if they want to tank more. You throw a second and get Kenrich Williams back. The deals like that are the only ones that you could see potentially being worth it for the Celtics. But you also have to consider the point of you could be doing something, this isn't correctly phrased, but effectively making a trade could be subtraction by addition. You'd be subtracting from the team.
I agree.
The team
what you're trying to
chemistry.
say is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yes. 100%.
Go on.
Yeah. So you don't want to mess up the team's chemistry. You don't want to, add someone into the mix that isn't going to get minutes or is going to be unhappy. What the Celtics have right now is very clearly working. So why mess with it? Is effectively what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote up some mock Pritchard trades just because he's the only person I could see them getting rid of to where it wouldn't subtract anything. You just kind of bring it. It would be similar to a TPE type deal just because you're not really playing him. You didn't play him Monday against Toronto, even though Brogdon was out. So I thought that could be an experimentation type thing where they're how do we fare with only two guards in the rotation today? But even then, there's not a lot out there. The most intriguing one is an Otto Porter thing, but that would never happen. They just signed him. They're not going to get rid of him. Yeah. He's been hurt. There's no reason for them to do that. The only thing is Toronto doesn't have any guard depth on the bench, so it would make a little bit of sense in terms of boosting their flexibility and floor spacing and ability to rest Van Vliet if he needs it. I also threw one together for Rudy Gay, not appealing at all. But if they wanted him, they could put him in the Blake Griffin role and wheel him out there if Tatum or Brown needs a rest and say go have fun. And
who is this again? Sorry, I
Rudy Gay, not a good, not efficient, not playing well, but I don't know.
Not a good
I was all right. And then Portland was the last one I had, and Winslow. That's an interesting one because that's been someone they've always kind of coveted here. It was Danny, but he's always been someone that's been kind of tied to the Celtics, and he wouldn't be the worst. He kind of can play defense a little bit. He has enough vision to keep the ball popping around.
I think his value is almost too high at this point, though. He plays a big role for that Blazers team. That's the only worry.
That's the problem.
He's been good.
Look at me.
He's been real good this year for them.
Some key role players around the league. But I did write about the 5 fellas that are going to be eligible to be traded next week. It'll be Hauser, Cornette, Gallinari, Vonleh, and
is it Blake?
It's Justin Jackson. And the people on Facebook were not happy.
Well,
they were not happy that I said they could all be traded because nobody read what I put in there. I said, listen, this doesn't mean they're going to be traded. I'm just saying they can do it if they want.
People love to read the title.
I was like, these are the rules. They won't click. They won't give me any money. It's really mean.
Unfortunate. Would you? I'm trying to think how to say this. Are there any trades that you would make for the Celtics if you were, presented with them? Are there any deals across the board that you'd say, okay, let's trade this and do this? Obviously, most of it would be around the margins, but could you see the Celtics making any trades this season?
I don't think so, man. The only thing is a TPE thing. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And even then, like, what's out there for 6.9? Not a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I can
By the way, I
load
just
up
got a
the old.
message saying how my views are doing well today after I just complained that no one was clicking. So there you go.
Hey, what I tell you, love to see it. People love trades.
People love trades. They love people dancing. By far the most
That they
ridiculous
do.
piece I've ever written.
Well, I'll tell you this: Celtics have their best TPEs a little less than 7 million, I believe. Players that
6.9.
fit in. Excuse me, I have to cough. Sorry about that. Players that could potentially fit into that. Kem Birch of the Toronto Raptors, if you're interested.
But you don't need that. Like
I'm
I'm not
just
interested in sliding someone in ahead of Cornette at this point. Cornette's too efficient to me. He's shooting 71% from the field, career
Mhm.
high. You can rely on him to come off the bench and be solid for you.
What about a Cam Reddish? Any
That
interest
one's
there?
interesting only because he can be like a project. But then again,
Mhm.
if Tibbs didn't play him. So there's that. But seriously, like if in theory he should have went to the Knicks, and if he was going to be anything, got the opportunity, and they would have made a decision.
Well,
He's either going to
Tibbs
be something
played
or not.
Evan Fournier instead, so that's his own fault.
That to me is interesting. I know it was out there that Milwaukee, Miami, and the Lakers
I
were in
think
on
so,
him.
yeah.
Not the Celtics. I think that one would be interesting because it again, like I'd rather have him sit on the bench and be a project than Justin Jackson, who has not impressed me in the slightest. Sorry. I don't know. Any other guys?
Sorry, someone's yelling in my house. I was confused. PJ Washington is another name that could potentially
Yeah,
become
okay, but
available.
like you have Grant.
You do. Who's better? Who's objectively better?
Maybe if you think Grant's gonna walk, maybe.
Mm,
But you're in control of that. The ball's in your court with Grant, regardless. Like you can pay him, you can match whatever.
yes, and I mean PJ Washington would only be for like, so Al Horford can get some rest at the end of the regular season. So maybe an upgrade over Blake, even though Blake's been really damn good for the Celtics this year.
Yeah, he's been pretty fine.
And
Like,
outside of that, I mean, you could bring Romeo Langford back if you wanna if you wanna bring
like
a
I
former
don't know.
Celtic back.
Like there are always interesting prospects to me. Like a Reddish is interesting to me only because people rave about him. He was picked high. Like he's not getting a lot of run in New York. Like all those.
Would you
things
trade for
factor in.
Tybull if the Sixers are giving him away?
Yeah, I would. I would take him to TPE.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like, would you give up like a first for him? Maybe a couple seconds would be where you max it out.
maybe.
But
Yeah, I mean, he can't shoot. That's the
that's the
problem.
thing. Like, if he's available, I would say is the only thing. Like for a couple seconds. Past that, I don't really see anybody else who would become available that'd be worth it for the Celtics. Alex Len, if you really wanted to try to upgrade to center position or get another guy. But like you said, Luke Cornett's been so good, it doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, Cornette's like earned his
Um,
spot to me. There is no need to screw with that.
The only other guy is, again, the Sixers rotation is pretty set, and it doesn't seem like he'd be available. But like George Niang, if they decided they want to, cut money or something,
A nice local lad
exactly.
on the team.
So,
Okay, I can get
but
behind that.
my thing with Tybal is he's only playing 11.4 minutes per game for the Sixers right now. So if you wanted to bring him in just to be like a defensive guy at the end of the bench,
Yeah, no,
maybe.
that's my favorite of all the ones you mentioned, just because him and Hauser can like combine to be one guy. Except Hauser can kind of play defense, and even though he gets like picked on, he does a pretty good job.
He can. He's
But
good.
Hauser can be the guy that can shoot, and Tybal can be the guy you put in if you really just need defense.
Yeah.
To me, that's interesting, and I also think you're gonna see if he was on the team. I feel like these guys that don't shoot well from three, like a Winslow, who I put in that article with the Pritchard trades, their
Mhm.
3-point percentage would jump at least a little bit just because the looks that they would get would be so much
Yes. I know exactly what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, Matisse Thybulle, you're talking a 2 times all defensive player. Like,
better. Yeah, that's
he's
fine.
that guy
I'd
on
take him.
defense. And
That's easy.
I don't think
take
he's
him.
available. I don't know if he's available. I just made that up because I know he's not playing
This is
much.
just one of those things where you have to wait and see which teams start falling off. Like you really keep an eye on what's going on out west, because as tight as it is now, it might not be that way the whole season. You keep an eye on teams like a Toronto, like a Miami, who has potential to start falling apart, even though Toronto's
Mhm.
more likely to be on the up and up over the years than a Miami. Like there are maybe a Charlotte, see if they're
Are
selling
they?
right. You mentioned
Do you
Toronto.
think Toronto has a better future than Miami?
Yeah, they have Scotty Barnes.
Well,
They
I
have Scotty
mean,
Barnes. They have Pascal Siakam. They have OG.
the
Van
Heat
Vliet's not
have
dumb old.
the Heat have Adebayo and Hero.
That's it.
Well, and Strus they have, and Caleb Martin, and Gabe Vincent.
All those guys that I mentioned for Toronto,
VanVleet's almost
besides
30.
Bam versus like Siakam, Toronto wins.
VanVleet's 28. Like, it's not like he's young. Like, he's older. I'm pretty sure
Once you get over
Siakam's
30,
28.
that's where you start looking around. I still think Toronto has a more sustainable team.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've argued about Bam in the past. He's fine, but like he's not going to be your.
I think Bam hero is enough to make a playoffs.
Yeah, playoffs, but like I don't know, that Toronto starting five is really good.
Yeah,
like it's really really good. So they really just need to improve their bench, and they can be a real pain in the ass.
I know what you're saying. It's an interesting
And
conversation.
who knows when Otto Porter comes back, that could be helpful to them because he was good in the playoffs.
But luckily for the Celtics, they probably have a better future than either of them.
Oh, the Celtics have the best depth in the league. Somebody got mad at me that I said that the Celtics have the best guard rotation in the league, and they started throwing like Donovan Mitchell in there. Like I was just talking about point guards, like White, Smart,
I know what you're saying.
Brogdon are all like technically point guards, even though they play White at the two. Like he can play the point guard,
and Pritchard there too, obviously.
Yeah, and if you really want to screw around, then throw Jaylen Brown in there, dickhead. Like he's averaging 30 points a game over his last 10. He's 13th in the league in scoring, and he's the number 2 on this team.
Tic-tac-toe.